Hey y'all, I'm Dee Dee from Spot 27. We're going to be talking today about submission from the book by Sarah Zacharias Davis, Confessions from an Honest Wife. Okay, so first I want to take off these glasses and maybe have a conversation with LensCrafter because they've got like a little glare and I paid for like the anti-glare thing, which was apparently a waste of money. Um, And the second thing is, if I look off to the side of the screen, it's because I'm looking at the online Bible that I have pulled up. So that's that. At any rate, some of the things that this lady is talking about, her name is Jeannie, is just the fact that when she got married, she was a really young woman. You know, she was like early 20s and she grew up in the church. She had godly parents. So surely she knew how to be a good wife. I mean, it's ingrained in you. If you go to a fundamental Baptist or Southern Baptist church or college or, Christian school, whatever, you know that as a wife, you are supposed to submit to your husband and you understand that essentially what your husband's desires are, that you're supposed to fulfill those needs. And it's an understood concept from early on. But what happens when you don't exactly fit that mold? And that's kind of what Jeannie is exploring as she tells her perspective on submission. One of the things she said was, the tension that she deals with these days is a struggle to figure out what submission means in marriage and everyday life. It's so easy to say, well, yeah, all I have to do is a little bit of hard work. I have to pray about it, talk it out with my husband, and everything's going to be fine. But then what happens when you're a little bit annoyed and your communication comes off in maybe just a little bit sharper way than you intended to, or you feel like he came at you in a way that maybe he shouldn't, and so you all balled up in your chest and now you're ticked off, and you having a little bit hard of a time saying, sure honey, I'll go downstairs and get dinner started for you, or sure honey, let's do things your way. um, does submission mean that whatever your husband says has to basically be it because he's the head of the household? How does that mean that two people are becoming one? Is the one person him? Um, so many things to really just think about in relation to submission. So Jeannie goes on through the chapter and she's saying, things like, one hand, she had the world telling her she will lose herself if she submits to her husband. She needs to maintain who she is. She needs to have other interests. And on the other hand, you've got the church telling you if your husband wants to have sex, you can't keep your body from him. You have to do it. If he wants dinner, you should have these things ready for him. I mean, those are things that you should do to be a good wife. And maybe not those things specifically. I'm speaking in general terms, of course. But if God made man to rule over a woman, does that mean that I have to fall up under everything that he's saying? That's a really scary position for a woman to put herself in. Today's context, we are every woman. We are independent women. We can do things for ourselves. We can be co-parts in the home. We can bring home the same amount, if not more money. We can still maintain the house. We can do all of these different things. So why exactly is submission still a big issue today? I don't know. Jeannie was having a problem with this too. Does being a good wife mean that you can't work outside the home? Does it mean that you wait on your husband hand and foot? Does it mean that you always say yes? So, something that she also said in this book, in her chapter, was, in most challenges in life, once you reach your goal, you've reached the top of Mount Everest, you've accomplished it, you're good, you've done it, That's it. Unless you want to go climb something else or whatever, do something that's equally as challenging. But in marriage, you never really hit that plateau, that place of everything's perfect and we are just gonna do this and it's great, because you're people. Your husband is a person and you as the wife is a person. So if you have two people with sin natures, hello, newsflash, at some point you guys are gonna bump heads. What you do when you bump heads is what's important. So Jeannie is talking about submission, but I'm going to refer back to the scripture a little bit, and I won't read the whole thing. Some of it will be paraphrased, just for time and attention's sake. So Ephesians 5:22 through 33. Wives, submit yourselves to your husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Everything? Okay. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. In the same way, and then it goes, on to explain how Christ loved the church and what Christ has done for the church. And in that same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own body. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body, just as Christ does the church, for we are members of his body. Then it goes on to talk about how husband and wife leave their father and mother, and they become one flesh, and learn how to dwell together. And it goes on to say, the husband needs to love the wife again as he loves himself, and the wife needs to respect the husband. And I think it really boils down to that last verse in chapter 5. Well, into that verse 30. Why can't I talk? Verse 33, which, for submission to work, in my opinion, for submission to work, the husband has to set the tone. Okay? You can't be out there doing whatever it is you want, treating your wife any kind of way, and then saying, submit to me, because that is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know why I put a T on the end of that. However, if you think about it, if your husband is being the man of God and he's being supportive and he's meeting your needs and he is loving you essentially as he loves himself, and hopefully your husband loves himself, but if he's doing all these things, it kind of makes it a lot easier for you to fall in line under his leadership. I do believe that a man that wants you to follow him should be worthy of that leadership. But you know what, sweetie? Unfortunately, sometimes those things aren't thought about prior to saying I do. So the big question for me has always been, if my husband is not doing what he is supposed to do I, as the wife, still have to submit? That is something that I think I'm still praying on and working on. My husband is a very wonderful person. I thank God for him. The fact that he can put up with all my crazy is just, well, he does deserve a medal for that. And by the way, I just noticed there's like a plate my kid was eating in the loft, so you have to excuse that. But anyway, really, y'all, when it comes to submission, if you model, if both people are meeting on the same playing field, if you are, as a husband, loving your wife the way that Christ loved the church, that was an unconditional, I'm going to give my life for you and I'm going to continue to meet your needs up until the day I die, and I am coming back for you one day type of love, your wife should have no problem, unless she's crazy, with falling into those arms of support and leadership, because she's going to trust you. But wife, don't take advantage of the husband when he's got them arms open wide and he's being this man that God has called him to be, and you take advantage of the situation because you know what? Unfortunately, yeah, in society there are roles of cooking and cleaning and things like that. So that's something I think if you talk to your spouse and said, hey, babe, I'm working too. I don't have a problem with doing these things, but can we divvy up the work? As a head of a household, he understands probably what it takes to make the house run. He might not understand every single little detail, but it's his house too. So he might want to naturally pitch in, or maybe he doesn't, but there might be something that he's more willing to do, like the outside stuff. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I don't do outside. I just don't do outside. Okay? That is Alan's job. And Alan is happy to do it. At the same time, there are things inside that he doesn't really care to do as well. And it's not to say that you can't get tired and slack off on the housework a little bit. You shouldn't slack off till you get hoarder standards, okay? Because that's just nasty. But I mean, it's just something to be considered. You guys have to find that happy medium as a couple and how to make your house a successful place to be, a peaceful place to be. I think that when it comes to sex, I mean, I don't know. The Bible does talk about, neither one of you withholding yourself from the other person. That is a whole other conversation that we're not about to get in this day. But what I will say about that is, okay, men should know if their wife is in the mood, and women likewise. And I think that out of a mutual respect for each other, that you guys can find ways to work that out. I think that was a diplomatic way to handle that. But other than that, you can't also, ladies, just be over there like, well, I ain't giving him none, because that's not right. That's scandalous. Oh, that's so scandalous. But you know what I mean? Again, esteeming the other person better than yourself. He has needs, you have needs. So when it comes to submission and love and respect, it is a consistent, everyday task that you guys need to nurture. You guys have to feed into this thing. Submission is not a natural occurrence, I think, after Adam and Eve ate the fruit. Okay. After that, everything got all willy nilly. And so it's in our nature to want to do the opposite of the thing that God has called us to do. And I did say opposite, really weird. But anyway, it's in our nature to want to do the opposite thing. But we have to find a way to die to that natural self and say, okay, but in God, I can be this woman. Okay. Just because, and to kind of refer back to something I said earlier, I know that the correct answer to the question is this. Just because he is not doing the right thing, God still called you to do something, which was be submissive. Now, am I saying that if he's telling you to go out and do something crazy, like, I don't know, sell drugs on the street, that you need to do it? Absolutely not. Because when it starts to conflict with your faith, that's his determination you're going to have for yourself. Because at the end of the day, ladies, the Bible also says that the wife sanctifies the husband, okay? The wife sanctifies the husband. So if you're doing what you're supposed to do and you were praying, and you're being diligent in that aspect, and you are still showing him and giving him that love, you have to trust that God will bring him around. You can't make a man do nothing. If you've gotten to a situation where you feel like, I have done everything that I can do, and it's still not working out, I do believe that you should express that to your husband and say, what more can I do? I don't think there's anything else I can do. And that's a conversation, a decision you guys are going to have to come to in yourselves. But straight up from Jeannie's point of view, submission is something that she grapples with daily. At the end, she says, perhaps that's one of the intentions that God had all along. Perhaps he wants these reflections on marriage to make us look more closely at ourselves and ask if we're not so much questioning submission to a husband as we're questioning submission to him. Ooh. If you are being submissive and obedient to your husband, despite him acting the monkey, you're actually being submissive and obedient to God. Let us know what you think. Bye.